Good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Moffitt. I am the acting chair of the Design Review Committee, and I would like to welcome you to the April 17th, 2025 Design Review Committee meeting. This is a 9-person committee whose primary function is to perform design review for projects located in one of the city's 3 designated design review areas: downtown, the riverfront, and the new hotel overlay zoning districts. Is it still new? Yeah. This is a mandatory review, voluntary compliance process with one exception for hotels seeking to skip council review. Hotels taking advantage of this incentive must receive a positive recommendation from the committee. All committee members and staff are participating in person, and we are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. You can watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel, either live or recorded. At this time, I will take a roll call. Christina Roche cannot be here. Jeremy Goldstein cannot be here. Catherine Kaya cannot be here. Stephen Lee Johnson.
Present.
Thomas McLaughlin could not be present. Michael McDonough.
Here.
My name is Brian Moffitt again. Robin Raines could not be present. And Ricardo Satan.
Here.
We do not have a quorum. We do not have at least 5 members in attendance. Our apologies for that. So we will move through our agenda. We cannot, because we don't have a quorum, we cannot review and approve our minutes from our January 16th meeting. So we will do informal design review for 134 Biltmore Avenue, a level 1 project, and an informal design review for 161 Church Street, the Churchill condominiums. That's a level 2 project. So 134 Biltmore Avenue, level 1.
You're good. No, so that's Tyler Kelly is going to be taking his first swing at design review. Tyler, why don't you introduce yourself to the committee?
Good afternoon. Tyler Kelly, Urban Planner 2, Planning and Urban Design. We'll be presenting 134, 138 Biltmore Avenue, owned by 138 Biltmore Avenue LLC. Project applicant is Megan McCreary with Siteworks Studios. This project came through as a level 1 due to the renovations exceeding 75% of the building value. So what we're looking at is just a couple minor site improvements, the demolition phase, removal of existing vegetation, a non-complying driveway cut, and some ADA curbs and sidewalks. You can see here, there are 2 existing street trees on Biltmore Avenue that will be preserved for counting towards the street tree requirement. They are lacking 1 street tree along Biltmore based on the landscape spacing requirements, although they have then exceeded the requirements on South Market to make up for that. The existing parking lot, I believe, will be untouched. CBD does not require any parking for residential projects, so that was not a part of my review. You can see here on the rear in South Market Street, the row of newly planted trees. It's a really steep hillside right there. I don't know if you've walked that path before, but trying to, let me go back to my second. So in total, the 10 trees along the property boundary will be preserved, with 5 designated as street trees and the remainder serving as non-mandatory buffer trees. And those can be seen here on Plan North. Magnolia tree on the southern portion of the rear of the existing building will also be retained. 6 eastern redbud trees will be planted along South Market Street. That was the steep slope I was referring to. And then a cluster of 4 emerald arborvitae trees will be planted as a street tree for the middle street tree along Biltmore Avenue. So given the challenges of the existing sidewalks right-of-way width, they compensated, like I mentioned, for the additional street trees, and we made a zoning determination that they did not need to go to UFC for that modification. And so the last step is DRC, and here we are. And I guess I'll hand it to Megan.
So planning can, because the existing buildings, obviously, in the location of those existing buildings to the public right-of-way precluded additional street trees, zoning was able to do that without going to the forestry commission.
That's correct. So they still have the total requirement. They meet the requirement. They're just lacking one due to spacing.
Okay, we didn't have to do alternative compliance, or there's no other things that they need a formal recognition of or approval of from us for that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You made that on an administrative level, so we don't have to address it.
That's correct. Any other questions from the board? Let me pop back to the site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant want to present anything, or is there any questions for the applicants?
Hi there. I'm Megan McCrary. I'm with
So
Siteworks.
one quick note, would note that Stephen Lee Johnson is associated with Siteworks Studios.
I have the pleasure of working with Megan, is how I like to put it. Yeah.
Okay, but since this is an informal review, I do not believe he needed to necessarily recuse himself formally.
I don't think so. No, so,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. All right.
Great. I'm Megan McCrary. I'm with Siteworks Studios. Forgive me, I am battling allergies right now, so my voice is lacking.
Colin Mickey with Carlton Collins Architecture, also dealing with this sort of dualities.
Yeah, so as described, the project from a site perspective is pretty straightforward. We are providing for level 1 compliance, so that means providing street trees. That means providing a City of Asheville driveway apron where there is currently a driveway entrance, and it means also modifying an existing ADA ramp at the intersection of Broadway and South Market Extension to be in compliance. And those are the only site modifications.
Do you have any questions about the architectural?
We're really not modifying the exterior of the building. I'm just an architect, but I'm going to ask a landscape question. Is there the selection of the red buds in lieu of a larger canopy tree? Did you think, just curious,
There's an overhead power line right above those, so we're limited in our height.
I assumed that, I wanted that in the record, thank you.
You're
I had a question about the existing plant material, because I know that is what, like today makes this combination of buildings so nice when you're walking along the sidewalk. Are all the existing plants that are along the sidewalk and in front of the building, are all those staying in place? Or,
So all of the existing trees are to remain. The
Okay.
only vegetation that's being removed is at the back of the property along South Market Extension, and that's brush and some scrubby trees, but no significant trees of any sort.
okay, thank you.
So just out of curiosity, there kind of wants to be a street tree kind of between the two buildings on the street, and you're putting the arborvitae there. It looks like there's a space between the back of the sidewalk and that row, that hedge. You chose not to put a street tree not in the sidewalk and not behind the sidewalk because you preferred to kind of have a green buffer there, or there was some other hardship?
We're limited at the sidewalk because of the existing width of the sidewalk and the proximity of the existing building to the sidewalk. So we wouldn't be able to do a tree grate at the sidewalk. The area between the sidewalk and where you see the arborvitaes that are proposed is building access. And so if we were to plant a larger tree there, that would inhibit access to the buildings.
I think you also got
You
about
can't really tell by how heavy the lines are, but that's a stair up to that porch.
Oh, I see.
and it's a landing. And
Okay.
I also think all the water meters are right there. I'm sure you guys could stick.
Something.
Perfect. Any other questions for applicant?
I had one question. I'm just curious. It looks like there's some pretty significant concrete work going on the southwest corner with an ADA ramp. Is that because the existing one is not in compliance right there?
That's correct. Yeah, there is an existing ramp right there, but it's not in compliance.
Wow. Okay.
I'll say something, actually. There's a note about, where did I see? There's a concrete retaining wall. It says, contractor shall fortify the existing concrete wall as required for stability. There's not much of that wall left. Would it be better just get it out, take it out?
I think the one that you're referring to is page top right,
Yeah.
which is northeast. It's not holding up a lot.
There's like a foot of that wall left.
That would require further inspection on my part, and I'm happy to do that. I don't know that it serves a structural purpose right now,
Right.
and so that's going to require further follow-up with contractor or on our own. But I'm happy to do that if you'd like.
Yeah, because it seems like it would just be easier. I mean, it doesn't seem to be doing anything anymore, so it's easier to just remove it and be done with it. But not that bad. Obviously, sure.
Any other comments for applicant?
I had a question for, I guess, staff. If there aren't any like negative comments or concerns presented from the commission today, although we're not a quorum, does that mean that the design team will need to come back next month for a formal one, or?
Yeah, technically,
Okay.
to satisfy the requirements.
Okay.
Of the
Gotcha.
process.
Mhm.
You know, a way around that.
You can't release for permit without that, even though it's voluntary compliance.
Yeah, I did try to look into it a little bit to see if we had any flexibility, because it seemed a little, not unuseful, maybe not super necessary to have this project reviewed by you all, and what I've heard back is that there's no way to flex that formal review projects, since we're in our UBO code, so really hamstrung by that requirements.
Do we know if the project is time sensitive, if the schedule is tight, or if there's a hardship that y'all feel like? Yep.
The building is currently under demolition. We're
Mhm.
moving forward with construction because our shell and core permit was already approved. And the interior permits are only held up by this meeting. So those permits are waiting approval based on approval in this meeting.
Maybe we could look into a special.
Grading erosion control permit, like give them at least a grading erosion control permit. Is this what, is this meeting what it's holding up entitlement, which allows full release?
That's correct. So the building permit reviews can happen simultaneously, but the approval can't be released until planning.
P and Z says it's entitled, and then everything can go forward.
That's correct.
That's the logjam.
We can consider.
Actually, it's just my approval that this will be the last step.
Yeah.
And these plans, unless you guys have changes, would be approved as shown.
As shown, yeah.
The only other idea I have off the top of my head is help special meetings sooner than the next.
I'd be
year's.
game for that, and we could probably do it online.
We could, I think, do it virtual since it's special meeting, we still have the noticing requirements.
2 weeks.
So, yeah, 10 days, please, noticing.
Let's do it, try to do a doodle poll, see when people can get together for a virtual meet.
So that would shave 2 weeks off, kind of turn around before next fall.
I'm willing to do that. It will literally take like 15 minutes.
If this happens again, could one of the committee members that's not here, could they have tapped in virtually?
Not at the moment, with that technology in this room, although it exists in the world. But I think one day we can bring it from the world into this room is the plan. So yeah, at some point that might be a better option. That might be an option in the future, but it's not today.
Not even just like a phone
No.
listening?
Yeah.
They actually
I
have.
was gonna ask if
presence
they're
and
allowed to
seeing.
like give someone else their approval in absentia or something
No.
like that.
Sometimes pass comments along by way of second party, but we
It's a voting thing, and they, technically, I mean, we'll have public comment in a minute. You've got to have, if there was any opposition, they would have to have the ability to engage and interact, and can't really do that.
Yeah,
In
we're trying to find a
absentia.
way for having maybe committee members and also people that be able to participate virtually. Right now, we're only broadcasting out. Again, I don't think having on someone's phone is, it's a technically a workaround. I don't think it's like an approved workaround based on our,
Brad's already like raising his eyebrows.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's things that seem to make sense. Say it on an obvious guide with our official policies and stuff.
Okay. We don't have any further comments for the applicant at this time. Should I take public comment, looking for informal?
You could ask for it.
Okay. Is there any public comment for this proposal for, excuse me? If you, then please come forward. Yeah. Just state your name.
Craig Jeffries, I'm a citizen here, a voter. My question is, the trees that are in the back of the two houses, are they on the property of the two houses or across Market Street on that public land?
All of the trees that we're proposing are on the property.
Thank you, sir. Well, I don't think we can do anything else. We can't really vote on it. Hopefully, we will figure out a way to get a meeting prior to our next scheduled meeting and see if we can shave some time off of that.
Great. We appreciate you looking into that, and we'll be happy to join you if that happens virtually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate your patience.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We apologize for the delay. Okay. Our next item of business is new business, an informal design review for 161 Church Street. The Churchill condominiums, this would be a level 2 project, and this is an informal review of a proposed 9-story residential building. The applicant or the contact is Peter Alvarez.
So I'm just going to introduce the applicant basically and welcome them to present their plans to the committee and go through them. We have site plans and we have the architectural plans. But as stated on the agenda, this is a proposed level 2 project in the CBD located on Church Street near the corner of Banks Avenue. Site's currently a surface parking lot. What's being proposed is under the threshold for a conditional zoning, so the project would have to meet all the requirements of the central business district and would come before you all for a formal review at some point as a voluntary compliance measure. We've seen a couple iterations of informal plans by email to solicit some comments from the DRC, but now this is an opportunity to do it in person. So with that, I'll turn it over to Peter or someone else from the team. I think you can use the screen or the mouse pad. You can zoom in and out. This is the site plans, and then this tab has the architectural floor plans and stuff.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Alvarez. I'm with MHA Works in Asheville. I'm senior project architect and architect for this project at 161 Church Street. We've been working on the project now for several months, and we have provided some preliminary drawings really since the end of last year and received feedback from probably most of you here, some of which we've incorporated in, and some are items that will need to be addressed by our landscape architects who are part of Withers Ravenel. I know, Stephen Lee, you had some questions about landscaping at the front of the building, and we have brought in their folks to work on the landscape part of the project. The site is, if you've been down there, it's on the south part of Church Street. It's a one-way street, and it faces the backside of Lexington Station condominium project. So along the length of Church Street, where our building will be facing, there's at least one, maybe two parking garage entries into that building complex of a total of 4. So it's not what we would consider to be a key pedestrian street. I don't think it was ever intended to be a key pedestrian street, but we're still working within the guidelines of building to the street frontage, providing a 10-foot wide sidewalk from the back of the curb to the building. We're working to try to get incorporate as much glass as possible within the design of the building to give it some life at the street, even though there's nothing really on the other side of the street that's pedestrian oriented. Well, I'm going to move through the drawings here and talk a little bit about the entry. This slide shows on the plan northeast, north is the upper part of the sheet, that corner will be an all glass enclosed lobby entry. And the reason we put the lobby entry there is because the street being one way coming from the north down to the south, we wanted the building at nighttime, it would be lit up and it would be a welcoming beacon, if you will, for people coming to the building or walking by the building. So the first real major site issue that we dealt with is where should the building be placed. The second issue that always comes up with for sale residential projects is that parking needs to be incorporated within the building and needs to be secure. So what we're planning on is having a driveway entrance on the north side of the building, which again, plan north, to an upper level parking garage. And on the lower level, we had initially had the parking garage entry facing Church Street, and we decided to move that to the alley as well. So if you picture 2 trays of parking, one coming in from the south side at one level, one coming in from the north side at an upper level, and that will incorporate all the parking within the building. It'll be completely enclosed, and other than people living there, people going by the building won't see the cars. Moving up through the building where there's a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, all in the range of 900 to 1,300 square feet up through the main portion of the building. We get up to the 5th floor where incorporating the step back that's required for 2/3 of the length of the building. So what you're seeing here is a terrace that meets the 10-foot wide step back for 2/3 of the length of the building. And those dimensions are shown on the drawings. In the levels below that space incorporates 2 one-bedroom units. As we move up the building, we're changing that to a single larger 2-bedroom unit. And then that goes all the way up until we get to the 7th level, which is where the building's required to be reduced to 8,000 square feet gross enclosed area. So what we're showing here is the footprint of the 2-bedroom unit that was below. That will be removed, and the sides of the building will be brought in to get us to the point where we have the 8,000 gross enclosed square feet. At this level, we're going to incorporate a rooftop terrace that will face east, and we will have the landscape architects work with our interior designer to develop that space as a nice amenity space for the residents of the building. As we move up, again, we're limited to the 8,000 square feet. So in this upper level, what we're showing is another rooftop terrace space. This one faces west. So if you think about where the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, in the morning, people will be able to look out towards the east in a nice landscaped roof terrace, and the same on the west side of the building at the upper floor. And all of this incorporates or makes use of the roof spaces that are created by the reduction, or the required reduction in the floor plate of the building. So that's what it looks like in plan. In elevation, again, this is preliminary design review, so we have not resolved everything yet, but what we've, thanks, Brian. What we're trying to do is take another look at base, middle, and cap and try to break that down and try to make something a little bit more dynamic, if you will. And what we're introducing in here, there are 3 materials. At the lower part, from the second level down, would be brick and glass. On the left-hand side, up through and including the top of the 8th level, is going to be some type of masonry veneer that will probably be a thin set limestone or Arris-Craft type material that is in a 12-inch by 24-inch module that will have grouted joints. And then on the other side, on the north side of the building, where we have the projection that's allowed for to not be part of the step back, we're looking at incorporating a metal panel material that comes up and over the top of the building. And that's our strategy for breaking up into 3 parts. We have base, middle, and cap, but they don't stack on top of each other there. Some of it stacks, some of it is a configuration that runs up and over the top of the building. The windows, we wanted to play around with the windows and not have it, we always see these typical residential buildings where the windows stack and they look a little bit monochromatic, monotone, not much of a geometry to it. So we're sliding the windows back and forth where we can, and the windows run from floor structure to ceiling structure, so they're full height with the exception of where we need a spandrel panel to cover the ceiling cavity. So windows will be pretty tall, but they slide visually along flashing material that is built within the wall structure that would match the metal. So that, we see that as something that needs to be very well detailed to make sure that it works with the metals on the windows. The colors that we're thinking about, and again, this is still preliminary, but a brownish red brick at the base, limestone color for the masonry part, a mid-bronze anodized metal for all the window framing and the flashing. And we're thinking about either a sort of a pewter gray for the metal, for the vertical metal panels, or a mid-bronze anodized panel for that. And we're still looking at that. Putting in the required street trees across the front. There's not a whole lot of space there for additional landscape work, but Stephen Lee, to your point, I think we can possibly do something with green screen or some type of plantings next to the building. We do have a little bit of room there for that. Both exit stairs exit out to the sidewalk as required, so we're a little bit limited at those points by code. And then at the very northeast corner, which is to the right-hand side of the page, that's where the entry is into the lobby space. Let's go through these elevations. This is the north elevation here, again, we're at the bottom left is the north side of the lobby entry, garage entry sort of to the right-hand side of the building, and then we're using the same limestone material as the exterior skin on the north side. Now, you're wondering, I know you guys are all asking, why did we change materials at that point? You see that on the north side in shadow there, that's where we're breaking at the inside corner, we're changing the material. So we wrap the corner, where we're back to the limestone. And the reason for that is we wanted to accentuate and emphasize this L-shaped element that reflects some of the rationale behind what's allowed for step backs and what is not. And we thought it was a good way to break the building up, to make sure that we tried to meet the intent of a base, middle, and cap, and not do it in a literal manner. On the back side of the building facing west, it's more straightforward than the other side. This side faces into the woods, and this is where the main views are, towards the west. Again, we have the limestone panels at the base part, the middle brick at the base, and then the metal panels at the top side. And then on the south side, we have a similar strategy where we're breaking up the exterior materials with the limestone, the brick, and the metal panels. And to the left-hand side are the garage doors that lead into the lower level of the garage. This is a view from the northeast corner showing the entry at straight at the corner, with glass, pretty much that entire vertical element up to the 8th floor. And again, the idea there is that at night that will be lit up by the residents in the building, and it'll be a way to announce the building, that tells people that there's life here at this site. And we think it's a really nice feature, rather than putting the entry in the middle of the building and having the corners be dark. This is the northwest corner. Again, this is what you're seeing at the front of the scene. There's the wooded area. This is the southeast corner. And you can see here the main step backs that are, actually there are 3 step backs in the building. There's one that's at the 5th level that steps back for the 10 feet. One at the 8th level that steps back to meet the requirement of the 8,000 square feet. And then on the back side, up on the top in the middle, that's the 3rd terrace that meets the requirement of limiting the gross area to 8,000 square feet. The 8,000 square feet, that reduction, that's an interesting requirement, because it really limits what can be done in the building. We understand the logic behind it. We've spent a lot of time in early schematic design really figuring out how to shrink this thing down to 8,000 square feet and have it make sense with the structure of the building. So I think we're getting pretty close to that. These are following drawings here, just building sections. This one's running north-south. It gives you an elevation view of terrace on the 7th level. And then this is a cross-section showing all 3 of the terraces. So you can see we're trying to take this building that has mass requirements in it from the design guidelines and coming up with a way to take those requirements and turn them into an advantage to the building. And I think we're getting there with that. We're pretty happy with where it is so far. That's where we are right now. I know that, Ryan, you had some questions about sort of the detailing of the exterior skin, and I know that Stephen Lee had some questions about the landscape elements of the street. We're open to discussing that, of course, but we feel, in terms of how we're dealing with the design review requirement, or the design guidelines, that we think we've come up with a pretty good way to do it, and we hope you guys think the same.
Let's talk about building organization just a bit. So we won't rehash what we think of the design guidelines. We'll just try to use them best we can. How's that?
Sure.
And so the one thing I'd say, if you could go to, I think it's the northwest view perspective, shows that kind of from the northwest. So I disagree with your move to the entrance to the north. I was struck when I reviewed this, and it hasn't substantially changed. Either kind of one of those. So
That's the
that's the
northeast
north
corner.
one. I want the northwest one because that rear elevation. There's a couple of things that I really liked about it. One, I like the organization of it. But I think one of the things I liked about it on that one right there, that those tower elements that come out and extend up. So I'm talking about that tower element kind of midways.
Yeah, you want me to go, let me go to the elevation.
Yeah,
All right,
you see
here you
that
go.
one right there.
Yeah,
It's like the tallest face on the building, and it's very striking, especially in the perspective. And part of me was wondering if there was a way to organize that so that a piece similar to that. In other words, instead of shrinking away from the building on the north, east, and south sides, if you could have your corner piece is very, very striking, but it goes up and stops. I would kind of like it to go to the full height of the building. In other words, that north
Yeah.
corner, that northeast corner, your corner inlet, are you tracking? I don't know if I'm describing what I'm saying.
no,
I'm
it's
doing
this
talk
corner
architecture.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so that glass element, if it went all the way up, like if you pulled the building out to the face of the building on the corner,
Mhm.
I think it's like, it just would accentuate it a little even more than it is. So it's, because when I look at this northwest perspective, that big element that goes all the way up, that one plane, and it's a very well designed element. I like it. The window pattern on that was nice. That it looks more striking, and it's on the side that nobody's going to see.
Right.
And I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying I'd like to see something as striking on the lobby entrance.
All right.
That's
Hold-
one of the first things I'd say. And I know that you're doing a ton of things, and that would mean a lot. I'm just pointing out that from a form, it taking that lobby element up and then stopping it diminishes the lobby.
Mhm. I think you're right. On the plan there, that's where it's pulled back.
Yeah.
Where the guardrail is to the very right-hand side, that's the plane that lobby is on. So we could look at shifting some things around. I don't think that's I think it's an idea worth looking at.
Yeah, I think you'd like to see it before you said no.
Oh, I'm not saying no. I'm just, what I'm going to ask for, though, is there a way to,
Well,
Ha-
that's what, you know the design guidelines more than I do. Like, I can't remember now, like, if you have to pull back from all street faces.
Did
I
you
thought-
say two-thirds?
I thought
Two-thirds?
we were allowed, I thought the two-thirds rule,
that's two different things. The two-thirds starts above the full height of the fifth floor. You got to step in 10 feet for
Okay.
two-thirds the length of the building. One-third, you can keep it the same plane. Once you get above, say 75 feet, you have to reduce it to 8,000 square feet if the site's less than 20,000 square feet.
but it doesn't necessarily have to pull back on
No,
specific streets.
no, you can do whatever you want. What I would ask is, if we do that, and I think that's a good idea to explore pushing that element out, is there any room for a technical modification to allow us to add a little bit more square footage to the floor plate?
So it's a UDO requirement. It's not even, it's in the guidelines too, but it's more of a UDO thing, so it's level 2. Able to push the zoning. Yes. you can.
Okay. Well, aside from that, I think it's an idea worth exploring, so, yeah.
And then I think you got my other comments about I really do like that west elevation and the way you did the windows and stuff there, in some ways more than, some of what's going on the others. That was a big organizational, piece. Again, and I could tell from this new one, I'm switching back and forth between my classes. Where's the front door on that front elevation?
Yes.
Because I just felt like there's a lot of things going on with the building form and stuff, but I didn't, at least in the previous iteration, I really felt like the location of the door was not clear within the storefront organization. I couldn't tell where the door was.
Yeah, the door is to the right-hand side.
Okay,
There's
so
a
you
column,
moved
and
it.
then the
It's
door,
recessed.
yeah,
It's the only.
it's only recessed.
I see it now.
At the street level.
I
Mhm.
see it now.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
see tell by the shadow line. The reason we did that was we're trying to create a lobby space where people come into the lobby from the street, don't walk right into the seating area. So we moved that off to the side. Also, the left-hand side of that column is a place where we're going to put the call box and
Yeah,
that sort of
okay.
thing.
That does look better, thank you. And then, we talked about the balconies and the detailing of that, that's next. It looks like you want to address one of those.
Yeah, the balconies, the way they're going to be glass with a railing across the top that matches the metal.
I think I had a question on, like, if you wanted to be consistent with, you have that material that is the kind of your window header right now, like taking that and wrapping that around the base of the balcony, so instead of having like a little floating plane,
Yeah,
you would continue that. So you would have, basically, that's your structural header. And
Yeah.
it's just consistent throughout the building, but that's details.
yeah, that's a good idea because the building, we've just gone through several pricing exercises. So it's going to be post-tension concrete.
Oh,
So
so it actually is going to look like that.
well, no, that's just what the model looks like right now.
Yeah.
We don't want to have just a raw edge of concrete out there.
Right, you'll have to have something, right, and
Mm.
I thought that was the right material.
Yeah.
All right.
Brian, what we may end up doing is if you look at this in detail, oops, I guess it's as big as it gets, but the header over the window, that covers the ceiling bottom.
That's what
And
I
then
was-
across the top of it, at the floor line above, is the flashing material that runs
Right.
over. And we can wrap the balcony. The balcony will probably be 6 inches thick and with some type of ceiling. It may not be the same height as the piece covering the plenum, but we'd have the same color and material.
On material, and then it would just be a consistency. Versus header.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
would have wall that was either the masonry or the metal panel.
Yep.
And that's your structure.
Mhm.
I'll let my other commissioners jump in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I just wanted just a couple of comments, and I know you got those notes I had earlier. And this just in general conversation. I think that, even though this is not on designated as like a major pedestrian street, I think that we'd be hard to find a more attractive pedestrian street downtown, even down to this level at the end. It's probably the nicest street we have in the Central Business District for a number of reasons, but just due to the existing tree canopy, the buildings, the low volume of traffic, and it's evolved a lot in the last few years, as we all know. For a lot of people, it's a major corridor, pedestrian corridor to Chai-Panny and Highland Brewery and everything else that's down that way. So it just has always been a really special street to me, living and working downtown. And I think it's such a huge building, but it is a perfect spot, I think, for more residential, and I hope that it's a lot of full-timers or that live here. But a great location, have great quality of life downtown. I think it's probably the tallest residential building in Asheville, with the exception of the Eris Hotel and I guess the old Battery Park Hotel. It's probably the tallest residential building that we would have downtown.
Is it taller than the other buildings? We've got two recently.
Yeah, 145 is, the base floor elevation, 145 is a little, almost a little bit higher than this. 45 Ashland, of course, is higher up the hill, but I don't, as far as the building height from grade, I think you're right. I think, because those two buildings were not high-rise, and this is.
And I know that, across the street, those condos, they have their garage entrances are there, but they have a really, beautiful space all along the side of their building. Yeah, and the shaded character of it. So I say that just to mention the fact that, this is a big project that I think is going in a good location for residential, but it's going to have a big impact, and just with the character of what's around there. So I would, in addition to the comments that I had about just trying to, do what is feasible and possible to really just try to create some character on the pedestrian, the streetscape that I would use going down there and walk through there, rather than just trees, but just really try to get creative with how the building design itself and integrated planters and permanent solutions could really add to not only the quality of life for the people that live in the building, but for pedestrians that use it. Without that, it gets really cold and stark in terms of appearance. But also, we always bring up, and this is on this corridor that, all the stormwater goes straight into Nasty Branch, and I know that it appears that the civil engineers are doing what's required, and what's required is the base minimum. And we do really, really strongly encourage every development to consider how they can, as a good quality development in downtown, follow the downtown design guidelines and try to develop unique and innovative stormwater measures. And I would assume for a building this tall that your HVAC equipment there's not an individual compressor for every unit. There's a big unit on top of the building, I would assume?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
And what will be on the roof will either be, maybe not, depends on what the engineers come up with. There'll be a generator up there. There'll be a transformer vault on the north side of the building. And the height of the parapet will vary depending on how tall the equipment is that we need to screen. So,
and I know it's not really our business who the developer is. It really doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing here. I would assume that they're out of town, but I would just really like if you could, strongly help your clients understand the numerous benefits of really responsible design and development in terms of the environment and stormwater, and then also how pedestrians and people that don't live, how everybody's going to perceive this building from their car or on the sidewalk. And it's because there's not really anything that's being done for those two groups, people in cars and people walking. There's not anything that's being done that's really benefiting Asheville. There are benefits, obviously, people, living here, walking the streets, taxes, all that. And I'm definitely excited about this type of residential work. But I would just encourage you, and I know how it kind of works with clients and budgets and all that kind of stuff, but, when you have flat roofs like this, and I know you know all about green roofs, but really getting it integrated into the early stages of or developed stages of design like this, it's just, we can't help but, I can't help but ask the question, well, why not? And if your client and the developer says that, well, it's because of budget, well, I think that's questionable, especially if you're considering long-term return on investment. And then also the goodwill that it provides to the citizens of Asheville. And, if there aren't elements that are shown that I feel like that the developer is trying to reach out in terms of these simple measures, it's just like, why do, what I think the design review committee should really consider that as an important part of our recommendations. And to me, it's a no-brainer, but especially given the character of the street and the sensitivity of our watershed. And I'm sure you know all about it, Peter, but about right in here, all that water and where you're tying in, we get into antiquated, ancient, 100-plus-year-old stormwater infrastructure that's crippling and failing all the way down till it ends up daylighting at the lab, Keystone Lab, White Labs.
Yep.
But I would, and the client, if they don't live in Asheville, they may not be aware of all that, but I just would encourage that.
Well, thanks for bringing those comments up, because we are planning on putting green roof on the building to help with stormwater. And everything along the street edge, on the sidewalk side of the building, from the second level floor line down, which is where the masonry, the brick masonry is, that will need a lot of study because in my mind, we want to articulate that in the masonry. So it's not just a flat brick wall, one thing. And I think if we can look at, and again, if there's some movement or modification to be allowed to narrow up the sidewalk a little bit, maybe from 10 feet to 8 feet, that would give us a planting strip at the edge of the building that would give us an opportunity to soften the masonry at the street level. The key piece of all this, I think, Stephen Lee, what you're saying, is where the wall meets the sidewalk. And what that looks like, what the sidewalk looks like, and what that wall looks like. And
like the first 12 feet.
yeah, that's what
Vertical.
you see.
Yeah.
That's what you see. So
And I guess those are, that's not retail there, that's parking garage on the street level.
it's behind that. On the street level, again, on the right-hand side, that's the lobby. The two places in the middle, the one on the left-hand side is like a workout game room type space. And in the middle is storage units for the owners, but the storage lockers are not up against the window. There's you walk around them, so you won't be able to see through the glass to see it at night. It'll be lit up, and it'll look like any other space within
I
the
wouldn't want
building.
to try to run a retail spot right there. There's not enough
No,
traffic.
we thought about that, but it just would be very hard to make that work. But the masonry at that level, there's a lot of more design process we need to go through to articulate that, because it needs to be done right. And from my conversations with the client developer over the last 6-8 months, is they want to do the right thing. They want to make this a great project, and I've made them aware about green roofs. They like the green roofs that we've done, and we have not, from a technical standpoint, 1 at 12 South Lexington is 20 years old. It's never leaked. 145, that one's never leaked. Garage apartments, I don't think we've ever had any problems with that one. So they're, and it's one of those things that when, most of the year it's just green or burnt up, but when the flowers start to bloom in the springtime, people they love it. It's just a nice, nice feature to
Yeah,
have.
and we appreciate each of those, Peter, the impact you've made with those. So, well, that's good. That's good to hear. So, that's all I've got.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'd like to expand upon both the comments so far. A little alarmed when you justified the north corner as the entrance because it's a one-way street, which implies you experience the building from a car. Plenty of people walk up that street.
Right.
So I hope that you don't use that language anymore because it kind of reveals a bias that was either intentional or unintentional. I agree with Stephen Lee. I love that street, and I feel like the building, I will experience the building more from below, from Banks and down there. And so the other corner, I appreciate where you chose to put the entrance. That all makes sense. But because it's so tall on the downhill side, that corner is almost more powerful. So even though it's not the entry, like don't forget that when you're standing at the bottom of Church Street and all those funky streets kind of come together, you're looking up at that corner.
Right.
And
Good point. That's a good point.
so far, nothing's happening there, really. There's no connection to the sidewalk. It's a workout room, and it's essentially a big, hole cut in the skin to kind of break down this scale a little bit. So, and I don't know it makes sense to bring the glass down to the sidewalk, but if you were start talking about maybe possibly biting into the 10-foot sidewalk, that would be a great place to do it there, just to soften that corner.
Okay.
And then the other corner, the upper corner, I appreciate all the logic of the entry. The front door is pushed right up against the driveway, and there's a bollard shown there. I don't know if it will eventually be like that, but you're kind of pushing the people right up against the driveway, and maybe you might want to soften that up. And it almost feels like you're walking up the driveway to get in the front door. So I don't know how you do that. Either maybe the paving going up the driveway is modular paving or something, so it's not such the driveway feel, it's more like an entry plaza.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
you've got way more space dedicated to the car than the people approaching the building there. That middle bay, again at the storefront, I'm reinforcing the notion that this is a really good street and you're going to make a serious investment here. So in addition to meeting your clients' needs and the residents, let's make it a better street too. So that middle bay is the storage. It's like a little mini storage building inside your building, from what I can tell. And it looks like there's a floor break about a third of the way up that glass panel.
Right.
So you're looking into a basement level storage. It's kind of a racetrack design. And then there's the floor band, and then you've got the upper storage. I know it's deep into it, but you're looking at the wall that it's enclosing people's stuff. So hopefully some cool graphics or color or texture or something on that interior wall, because that's your storefront. You're looking
Yeah.
into boxes that are holding people's stuff.
Yep. Yep. That's.
And maybe extend the storefront element down to the sidewalk instead of a hole cut in. I mean, it works on the corner there where the lobby is, and I know you're just revealing more kind of intestines by bringing the storefront down, but maybe it's not the stone. Maybe it's a panel that implies it's a storefront. That's kind of what the storefront design guidelines say, to bring the storefront down to the sidewalk. So, and then on the other corner, downhill corner, doesn't make sense really to bring it down to the sidewalk because it's so tall. Oh, I meant to mention, thank you for moving the downhill garage entry from the street off the alley.
Yeah.
That was super big. That was just blowing my mind to see that big downhill corner given to the entrance to a garage.
Yeah,
So
it's,
that to me is like a significant major improvement to get a garage door off that corner. A couple other minor things, reinforcing vividly, look at street furniture, lighting, art, whatever you can to enliven that sidewalk. Right now, it's feeling really sterile. And don't forget, like, some of the upper balconies have flat roofs, and so you're looking up at the ceiling, and I think about this all the time when I'm at Pritchard Park at night, and I'm looking up at the Restoration Hotel, and you're looking inside that upper venue space up there. All I'm seeing is the ceiling and the ductwork, and it's just it's a mess up there. So remember that at night, we're going to be looking up at the ceilings of some of those patios, mostly on the corner there.
Right.
Just be careful about your lighting placement and everything on those balconies, because we are seeing a lot of the underside of those things. I think sometimes designers forget to think about on tall buildings, we're looking up at ceilings. And one last thing I'd like to reinforce what I said earlier about that tower corner. I feel like the front is mostly a series of boxes just kind of positioned around, and they all kind of stop, at that spot. And I think spatially, I think this is probably, of the four projects I've seen of yours, the most spatially interesting one, with the way you're pushing and pulling the boxes to create exterior spaces. I think I'm pretty excited what you're doing, but I think that corner, that northeast corner is a little arbitrary, the way it kind of stops at that line, and that box is kind of set back, and the box that's set back kind of grows taller and shorter, and so I'd say study that corner.
okay. I like that idea. I think that's a really good idea.
I was going to say the same thing that Michael pointed out. This building, when I read your narrative, you talked about how the entrance is pointed up towards because of the one-way street, but from that intersection of the banks, there's no place where you're going to see more of this building than from that intersection. I mean, you just stand down there, and it's just going to be, you're going to see most of the building from that one point. So I think, to Michael's point, paying attention to that corner is important. I'm going to make a comment or a suggestion or whatever that might help think about the corner at the entrance. You have the masonry, the light beige masonry kind of draped over, everywhere, for the most part, everywhere where you have the dancing windows, you have that material.
Yeah, I like that.
So
That doesn't sound like waterproof to me, but
Well, no, if you zoom out on this view right here,
you got the same one.
yeah. So, but right there in that one section, you have all that dancing windows, but it goes through the middle panel, right? So there's a weird, there's a weird break that doesn't make sense to me, because when you look at the wall going back from the right and you look at the wall going back from the left, you have the dancing windows, you have the beige masonry. It's almost like a lacework, really thin, delicate lacework draped over the building, but then it just sort of stops abruptly. And then the dancing windows continue. So if this section here was
You're talking about right to the right of the corner.
correct, yes.
Okay, where everything aligns vertically.
Exactly. So where, for the most part, like, I'm sorry, not to the right, to the left on the image, to the left on the image. So there's a metal panel with the zigzag. Right. Right.
You're talking about where, at the upper part of the building?
No. The section directly above the big store, to the left. That piece, yes.
Right.
Right, so is there a reason why you continue the, specific reason why you continue the middle panel there and not use the beige masonry? that you're
Yes,
using elsewhere?
yeah, the reason for that was to, let me go back to the elevation. It's a response to the requirement for the step back. So the 1/3 part of the building that is allowed to be at the building line, we made that the metal. And then the other part that's the masonry, that steps back at the 5th
Right,
level.
you mentioned that earlier, yes. But I don't think, well, I don't know that that's a, strong reason because conceptually, it makes sense, right? You
Mm.
have you have these, you have something that you're responding to.
Mhm.
But as a pedestrian walking, along the street, when I see the building, that's not gonna mean anything to me, right? I'm not gonna know anything about setbacks, I'm just gonna
Right.
look at what I'm seeing in front of me, and I'm gonna, and I think that southeast, northeast view perspective, it just shows it very clearly that if you can imagine that beige lacework wrapping all the way around.
I think.
Yeah, but if we did that, then it would break down or negate the singular tower element that we're trying to create there.
Well, but then you can park, right? Because when you look at that corner, everything at the corner itself is,
Yeah, that's why one of the reasons I was saying, if he takes the glass and the balcony of that on up, and then a little bit of the metal, then it'll look like you've got the masonry on the alley side, you've got the corner element that brings it, and then you've got the metal panel piece, and
Right.
that captures that full color. Now, the 9-story piece would be the metal panel piece on a church, part of the balcony, and then it would wrap around and it would stop kind of at the glass. Is kind of the way I don't know how he's going to do it, but it would really create more. And that's what I was seeing on the west elevation, is that thing looked like an element, it's a 9-story element that went all the way up. And even though it had 3 different materials, or at least 2 different materials on it, it felt like a piece. And I'm thinking.
Okay, so yours,
Form on the corner to break the materials. Maybe on
or a
maybe
void, or a void.
Okay, sure. But it needs a formal mass, either positive or negative, to create its sense of space, and then
Right.
be the juxtaposition of the materials.
Right, but see, like, if right here, this is the moment.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and Peter does too. It's where, if you go back to that, looking at the corner, I know exactly what it is, but I can't, it's one of the reasons I bring that back up.
It's at the step back.
It's where this, the masonry, wraps around, and where it kisses, the masonry kisses the middle panel.
Yeah.
It's weird. And
Well,
that's
we-
part of the reason I want to bring that
Okay.
in and up, so that you have that balcony and that glass, keeping those 2 pieces separated.
Yeah, and in my mind, if you were doing the beige on either side, right, and you're stopping it's rather than coming around that parapet or that ledge there,
right,
you just stopped it at either side, and then you allowed that vertical element to come through, even, whether it's a solid or a void, whether it's you're allowing the metal panel to come down behind it,
Mhm.
but what it's doing, for me, it's completing the sense of the lace work that's going on everywhere else, and it just stops here for some reason. Visually, I understand that you're responding to the setback, but visually, it's just a little bit jarring because it's so clear everywhere else, and it's happening, almost consistently throughout the building, all around the building, but then it just kind of stops here. So that's my
And to me, that treating that as a skin, as that lacework that I'm talking about, kind of gives you something to work with to give that corner more identity or more stress that corner. And then I had a question which is kind of for Stephen Lee.
He's listening.
We've got, they're showing white oak where that straight, is that really work?
Yeah, they're probably meaning a cultivar. I couldn't read on my screen here, the schedule was real fuzzy, but I saw that it was they're probably talking about a cultivar. But it's definitely not, like the straight species is not a cultivar. But you're right, it's difficult to transplant, and it's probably like a overcover, which is a cultivar. It's a good comment. So,
Yeah, I saw it. It reads fuzzy here, but I saw it. I just had a question about that. It seems like white oak is too big for that space, and also I don't know if
It's not common there. Something common there.
they perform a lot differently when they're in a streetscape, so we've never seen its full potential lifespan on the street. Not if it's called hard. I think that's what the intention is now.
Thank you.
Any other comments from us? Any questions?
No, will we be getting some written notes back from,
We have it on recording. We're not taking formal notes. We usually don't write them in the minutes for these types of.
but there's a recording that we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
access,
yeah.
okay.
We can run a transcript of it. I'm glad to like run it through our, using AI, like to summarize or
Okay.
minute summary. So sometimes it actually works pretty well to run the transcript through there, kind of cleans it up, and summarizes it. I'm glad to do that. So maybe we
Okay,
Yep.
well, I'd appreciate that. I think all these comments are great. So I appreciate your time, and there's a lot of really good ideas, a lot of things to consider, and we will, can't say we're going to do them all, but we'll
Yeah.
incorporate, I think the two key things, that tower element at the corner, sorting that out, and the experience walking down the street in that corner down on the southeast side.
Yeah.
Yeah, drink a couple of beers at one of the places on Bank and then just wander up and get a sense of how it's gonna feel.
Yeah,
Because like some of your earlier projects, I experienced them most from the downhill side, looking up.
Mhm.
I forget, it's on Lexington, I think, on the, on the east side of Lexington. I didn't realize how tall that building was until it was built.
Very good.
all right.
We don't have to take public comment, but I would, since I've got some folks out. Yeah, let's, I'm
Thank you
gonna
very
go ahead
much.
and take some public comment, if that's all right. Again, your name again, sir, I apologize.
My name is Craig Jeffries, and more importantly, I live at Lexington Station. We really appreciate the comments on Church Street and trying to preserve the integrity of that walkway. I think that's really important. Appreciate you guys focused on that. I have, one of the things that is just on the walking up on that wall, the mural would be great. Or Peter, when you're on Aston and South Lexington, at the parking garage exit, that bas relief there, that would be really dynamic for coming up the street and seeing that. That would be my suggestion. Always have a concern on how the trash is going to be picked up. North entryway or south entryway, preference would be on the south side. The biggest thing I have is the The entryway to the two garages are City of Asheville alleyways, correct? Am I right on that?
So we're actually looking at this recently. They are determined to be unopened paper right-of-ways, which means they are right-of-ways that were dedicated to the city, but the city never accepted maintenance of them. So they're privately maintained alleys that are in right-of-ways.
What was that last bit?
In right-of-way, so they are public right-of-ways, but they're
Okay.
privately maintained.
So as a resident down there, I'd love to see those alleyways be more than just an entryway to the garage. Maybe an EV station, maybe, just a little park. There's no parks in South Slope. So either of those would be good. And particularly on the north side, there's the alleyway, there are trees, and then there's this property that you're evaluating. Hate to lose those trees. I don't know if they're on the city side or if they're on the development side, but those trees are important. And in the back, on the west side, I don't know how you're going to deal with that forest, because some of those trees are big. So all I would ask is that we don't diminish the abundance of trees on both the north side and the west side. And on the south side alleyway, I'll be curious to see where that alleyway actually is. Right, the building below that has a shed, and I'm guessing that the shed is probably overlapping in the right of way. So those would be my my comments. Let me just see if there was anything else. No, that's it.
Well,
Thank you.
Your trash comment was a good one, because normally, in the final review, we see kind of more detail about trash. I'm looking at the plan, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like the trash room is on the upper parking level, which would mean it'd be rolled out to the north alleyway, which is where the front door is. So, I don't know how they do that, but it looks like on trash days, there'd be a bunch of trash cans like next to the front door. Just think about it, maybe. Oh, okay.
Yeah, please come back if you don't mind, since we're doing
Oh, yeah.
somewhat informally.
In the building, there'll be a trash chute and a trash compactor. So what goes rolled out into the alley will be a small cube or a couple of cubes of compacted trash along with recycling. We are going to contract with a trash hauler who will come into the garage and take those out. So we are not planning on having trash cans on that side of the building where the entry is, because that would be bad.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Very
Yeah,
good.
the solution for 145 Biltmore is there's a vendor that comes by and empties all the individual trash cans, so that sounds much better. What was my other comment you were talking about? Yeah, you ready to go? I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Since we have no other business, I think we can be adjourned. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.